Hello everyone and welcome to Who Wore It Better, the weekly segment in which I review Raw and Smackdown back to back and try and figure out which show won for the week. Spoiler alert, Smackdown won by a landslide, but let's talk about how they got to that point. Beginning with Raw, Stephanie McMahon comes out at the top of the show. The Chicago fans are all aflutter. They just can't wait to deluge her with CM Punk chants, CM Punk, CM Punk. And then she immediately shuts them down by doing the whole dig at CM Punk and his loss at UFC earlier this year. And that shut the fans up right quick. I think the fans in Chicago deserve every bit of that burn. I think it's time. It's been 3 years, folks. Time to get over it. And you know what? I'm sure that was planned. I'm sure they expected CM Punk chants and they wrote a good comeback for her to say. I don't believe that was something that she said off the cuff. But, you know, who cares? Because it was still an awesome burn. Stephanie makes the match between Rollins and Braun Strowman for later in the night, which I'm going to just jump ahead and talk about that right now. To me, it felt very, very similar to the Rollins Big Show match they had a couple weeks ago on Raw. Just the same kind of big man, little man thing. The thing where Strowman was not really selling. He wouldn't take a knee, he wouldn't bump for any of Rollins' stuff, which he shouldn't. I don't think he should do that, but I think just the storytelling they did was very similar. Rollins coming off the corners, doing the knees and stuff, spot for spot, similar to what they did with the Big Show. The big difference was Sami Zayn comes out and distracts and actually hits Strowman and causes the DQ. So again, I think Strowman saves face here. He still looks dominant because he doesn't take anyone's shit. He doesn't take a knee. He doesn't take a bump. And Seth Rollins, he doesn't have to, he doesn't have to lose here either. Sami Zayn looks strong for his and Strowman's last man standing match next week on Raw. So all in all, it was an okay segment, but it just felt like I've seen it before, and that's a recurring theme for Raw tonight. The tag title match, Cesaro and Sheamus defending against the New Day. The New Day with their big old burlap sack of cereal. One kid got like mostly powder in his face when they were dumping ladles full of cereal onto people. I thought that was hilarious. In the continuing story of does this double team move by Cesaro and Sheamus make sense? There was a spot midway through the match where Sheamus had Xavier Woods in a backbreaker. Cesaro comes off the top rope with a big elbow drop and just totally wallops Sheamus. Totally, barely hits Xavier Woods. He just kind of nicks him a little bit, but pretty much lands entirely on Sheamus. Again, it was one of those double team moves that they've done lately that I thought, it would have been cool in execution if it was executed well. Again, Cesaro and Sheamus outsmarting the New Day yet again to retain the tag titles. And finally, we're seeing some more like cohesion. We're not seeing, they're still doing the face heel, the boo, yay reactions to the two of them, but it feels like it's less angry, bitter fighting that we saw in the last couple weeks. Like maybe they're finally going to be on the same page now. Anderson and Gallows with the most heelish thing they've done all year since getting signed to WWE. They ripped the head off of the Dusty Rhodes Bear. It was actually kind of a sweet, tender moment they had backstage with Goldust and Bayley. Bayley giving Goldust a Dusty Bear, and then Anderson and Gallows come up and they just rip the symbol in half. It's like, oh, it's so sad. I don't care who you are. I don't care how many belts you won in Japan. You do not rip off the head of the symbolic gesture of Dusty Rhodes, damn it. And then they beat the Golden Truth later in the night. That was kind of surprising. I expected it to be kind of like a one-episode story arc in which, the setup happens early in the show, then later in the show, they have their payoff. Like, they've done that a couple times with the Golden Truth in the last few months, but this time Anderson and Gallows won. And, this isn't going to set the world on fire. This is not the statement match of Anderson and Gallows. It's just more of that kind of like bully heel thing they've been doing, calling people nerds, which is like one of like the lamest heel insults you could possibly lob against somebody. But it's working for them right now, and they got their win on the Golden Truth. Hopefully they get into some more meaty storylines into 2017. Nia Jax back to her old jobber squashing self this week. She takes on Scarlett Bordeaux in a singles match. For some reason, I get why they did it, but it was still very weird to have Scarlett wearing the Sasha Banks shirt while she wrestles. That seems very Bush League to me. It doesn't make much sense. I mean, you can establish that, she looks up to Sasha. She said as much in the promo, but for her to wear the shirt, I thought was a little heavy-handed. Nia Jax squashes Scarlett, tells her to find a gooder role model. You had 5 words, Nia, and you got one of them wrong. I don't know how you would do that. But match-wise, physicality-wise, makes Nia look very good for her impending match with Sasha Banks, probably at the Royal Rumble. Bayley comes out, apparently not caring at all the fact that Anderson and Gallows just ripped up her gift to Goldust. Comes out and calls out Charlotte. Charlotte comes out. This is the weirdest thing about this promo. Charlotte called Bayley a child literally seconds after having just mocked Bayley like a child, doing that whole repeating, that thing. That's such a childish thing to do, and she just called Bayley a child. What are they doing writing Charlotte's story, her promos? Last couple weeks have been just bizarre. Speaking of bizarre, apparently Charlotte and her lawyer had a meeting with Stephanie on Christmas, and they voided the match from last week. They expunged it from the records because of the fact that, Charlotte got her shoulder up in the backslide, and so then they had a rematch where, you know, Bayley had to win to become number one contender, and then guess who comes back to be the guest referee? It's Dana Brooke. Man, I'm on a roll here. I'm totally psychic with this show. The winner of the most effective heel turn in 2016, folks, goes to Neville, because ever since he's come back at Roadblock, I think he's been doing great. He's been cutting awesome heel promos, and I think he's kind of assuaged my fears about his heel turn when I first saw it at Roadblock. He's totally changed his style up. Because I said before, when he turned heel at Roadblock, like, oh God, like, I hope they don't keep him the same moveset and everything, because his whole moveset, but when he was face, was totally designed to elicit oohs and ahs and cheers, because he just did a bunch of flips and flying stuff. You know, I think you can have a heel cruiserweight, but you can't be a big-time high flyer, because it kind of contradicts what you're trying to do as a character. But what they did with Neville so far in these first couple weeks, I think, has been awesome, because he's been cutting great heel promos. His style, the only time he did like flips and stuff in his match with TJ Perkins was for countering purposes. He wasn't doing this for offensive stuff. And the way he won, he just did the roll up with the tights and stuff. Perfect heel stuff. It was great. And then the thing later in the night where he jumped Rich Swann, and the one time he did a flying move was the Red Arrow. You know, looking back now, I kind of take back what I said, that, you know, don't let him use the Red Arrow as a finisher as a heel. He can use it, but it really should be the only flying move he does. I'm not saying he should be like every other cruiserweight on Raw right now, where all he does is submissions, but I think that, you know, if you just narrow it down to one, maybe two flying moves as a heel cruiserweight like Neville, then I think it's going to be so much more effective than if they have him do the same moveset that he had when he was a face. Oh, by the way, speaking of things that make me want to watch 205 Live, I love the backstage thing with Jinder Mahal and Jack Gallagher and the challenging the duel thing. Again, but by the time I've recorded this, I haven't watched 205 Live yet. I do want to see the duel thing, but like, it's just so funny that they're doing these, they're taking a chance with these storylines. It kind of reminds me of like NXT before it became what it is now, like NXT, but it was like a weekly thing that they taped alongside SmackDown, when you had a bunch of rookies just kind of doing this never-ending soap opera. Like when the storylines there got really wacky near the tail end of that phase of NXT, like that's what 205 Live feels like to me now. They're taking a chance with these kind of off-the-wall storylines and seeing if they work, and you know, they can take the chance on that because it's a smaller audience. But yeah, it makes me want to see more Jack Gallagher. Enzo and Cass both had great promo time in their segment on Monday, though I have to admit, Cass's part especially did kind of reinforce the idea that Cass is just fighting Enzo's battles for him, as you know, as Corey Graves is wont to mention. So that was kind of a drawback for me, but they're kind of in a position where they kind of have to have it this way. But you know, a big fight with Rusev and Jinder versus Enzo and Castle brawl, a very creative use of spots with wheelchairs. I thought that was pretty cool. Main event time, the U.S. Championship was defended as Roman Reigns fought Kevin Owens in a match that, God, we've seen a lot before, I feel. We've seen it before, we've seen it further before beyond that, and we're going to see it again at the Royal Rumble. And it's just got to the point, I've seen this number thrown around a lot in the last couple of days, 9-1, as in Roman Reigns is up 9-1 over Kevin Owens. And I don't think that's true. I hope that's not a real statistic. I don't want to go back at the results and look it up to see if that's accurate, but it feels like it's that way, because I feel like we're encroaching into Seth Rollins territory with Kevin Owens and his Universal title run, where he's just being made to look like a fool and losing all the time on television, only to pull out unlikely wins at pay-per-views. He did it with Seth Rollins. He's doing it with he did it with Roman Reigns at Roadblock. He's probably going to do it again at Royal Rumble. And I feel like that's kind of the mode we're in right now. It's the same thing that happened to Seth Rollins when he was champion last year. It's the same thing that happened to Rey Mysterio when he was world champion. I know that's, you know, those are your two very far apart examples, but those are the two biggest examples I can come up with. And it's just very unfortunate. Anyway, you know where I'm going with this. Roman Reigns beats Kevin Owens to retain the championship after Seth Rollins evens the odds when Jericho comes out to interfere. And so, yeah, we've seen this match before. It was a fun match to watch. I think both guys were very physical in the match, and I think they all hit their spots. But was the outcome ever in question? Moving on to SmackDown, the Wild Card Finals. I don't know why they called it that. I mean, I get, you know, finals because it's the final episode of the year, and you could argue, well, you know, Wild Card because, oh, hey, well, the titles are on the line, anything can happen, Wild Card. But to me, it was just like, let's put some words together and call it good. That's our special for the end of the year. Anyway, John Cena comes back, opens the show with a big promo. I mean, this was probably his most heelish promo I think I've ever heard him cut, at least in the last several months. He said he's sick of the new era BS. It's the mind time is now era. You know, he kind of turned the hustle, loyalty, respect thing that he's been using as kind of a shield as his face mantra, kind of a way to fight back against, you know, the haters and the other people he's been losing to. The whole bouncing back from AJ Styles, and he's going to fight back and he's going to do this and that. Like when you think back to early heel rapper John Cena and like the voice he used and the affectations he had like in his accent when he talked then, he started bringing that back in this one, and I don't know if that was intentional or if it was meant to be like a harbinger of things to come. Tag team titles are defended in a 4 corners elimination match as the Wyatts fought against the Usos. Welcome back, by the way, guys. American Alpha and Slater and Rhino. Heath Slater with the hottest of hot tags, although he fucks up, and I think he slipped off the rope, and the Usos was supposed to catch him with a super kick, but they botched it, and they had to redo it again, bouncing off the ropes, and then Slater and Rhino were eliminated. American Alpha eliminating the Usos later on in kind of surprisingly quick fashion, but then the Usos get their heat back by beating up American Alpha for a bit before the Wyatts come in. It's Orton and Harper representing the Wyatts in this match, and it's brilliant psychology, the fact that the Wyatts didn't even enter the match until they were one of the last 2 teams in there. And speaking of psychology, I think Randy Orton is one of the most underrated wrestlers of this generation. I think people find him kind of boring, but I think he is just one of the most fundamentally sound wrestlers of this generation in the company's history overall, but especially just in the last 10, 15 years. Everything he did in this match in particular looked so good. I was really paying attention to what he was doing, and everything looked so perfect. It was great. I say that, and then the spot near the end where Orton decked Harper in the corner, I was really confused because it looks like Harper like got in the corner and like I guess kind of made Orton slip, but then Orton just fell into a perfect forearm shot to Harper. That was really weird. It just looked like Orton just randomly decked Harper, and I had to play it back a few times to wonder, like, was he blinded? Did he not know who he was hitting? And then I realized, oh, he slipped, and then like, but it was just weird, like, how often do you fall and then like throw a perfect shot, you know, against a guy? It was just kind of a weird spot there. They hit Grand Amplitude on Orton. I'm surprised Orton took the fall. I thought, you know, Harper's the one taking the fall here. If you got Harper and Orton, who are you going to pick to take the fall? But it was Orton who took it, and so that was kind of surprising. American Alpha win the SmackDown Tag Team titles. They're the first tag team to win the NXT tag titles and a main roster tag titles in the same year also ever. I think that distinction, you could cheat it and say the Wyatts were the first to do it because they were briefly NXT tag champions, and then of course the Wyatt family, the new Wyatts, were the SmackDown champions, but that combo was different in NXT. It was Harper and Rowan. Women's title matches. Alexa Bliss defends against Becky Lynch. This was a really fun match. My favorite of the series between these two, and really this series is everything that Charlotte and Sasha Banks should have been on Raw. Not so much back and forth with the title, not so much hot potatoing, get a couple of consecutive victories here and there between the two. You know, I think that's how you should do it. There was smooth mat wrestling off the bat by Becky Lynch. Then there was lots of counters between the two in the opening sequence. They were really using the R2 button a lot, really very well timed counters in that opening sequence. Good grappling overall by the two of them. They did some grappling stuff, they did some outside stuff, they did some great stuff in the ring. I thought it was overall a very well balanced, very fun match. La Luchadora comes out of nowhere. Who is this masked woman? It's very similar to like the whole Blue Blazer thing when like Owen Hart was and wasn't the Blue Blazer. I think it's kind of funny what they're doing there. Some people are speculating already that it might be Tamina who might be under the mask, but who really knows? I don't think the height was there for me. But holy shit, let's just talk about the spot at the end, the disarm her and Alexa Bliss with like looking like the dislocated arm. I'm amazed that they haven't pulled that trick out before. The fact that Alexa Bliss is double jointed, I'm amazed they haven't gone that well before. This is the first time they've done that spot. Are you kidding me? That's amazing restraint to have to hold on doing that distraction. And you know, I knew it was I almost threw up when I first saw it. Don't get me wrong, I thought it was real at first, but I think, you know, I was eventually kind of like calmed down. But the fact that like the referee didn't immediately vomit in the ring and throw the match out, also the fact that they held on to that shot for way too long. If you watch like, you know, sports like football and basketball and stuff like that, when a player gets like a serious grievous injury, like a dislocation or a broken, like a compound fracture or something, they cut away from that shit immediately. And the fact they held on that shot for so long, maybe okay, clearly this is planned. They would have cut away to the audience by this point if that were real. It was an amazing visual, and it was an amazing, amazing moment, amazing spot. You know, for this to distract the ref while La Luchadora hit Becky Lynch. Alexa Bliss pins Becky Lynch and retains in a really fun match. Cool little continuation of the story arc between The Miz, Dean Ambrose, and Renee Young, having the whole, like, I won't talk to anyone unless it's Renee Young, and then she comes out, and then the security goes away, all the indie workers, they leave, and then Ambrose comes back and jumps The Miz, and that's going to continue the feud. And then next week, they've got an Intercontinental Championship match on SmackDown, so we'll see where that goes. Main event time as AJ Styles defends the WWE Championship against Baron Corbin and Dolph Ziggler in a hell of a triple threat match. This was a lot of fun to watch. I've said the word fun a lot in this part of the review, the SmackDown portion especially, but yeah, I think, you know, when you're a fan and you're actually, you know, on the edge of your seat and some of the spots are this exciting and fun to watch, and that's the best way you could describe it. It was fun, it was hard-hitting. Baron Corbin looked like a world beater in this. I think he was booked the precise, correct way he should have, just beating ass left and right, and finally it took both guys to take him out. I love the double team, the reluctant shrug, double team, jumping onto the table, onto Corbin through the table. I do think Corbin missed his cue after he took the table spot. He was supposed to kind of break up the pin when Styles was getting pinned by Ziggler, but he didn't make it there in time, so Styles had to kick out himself after the super kick. That looked a little kind of awkward, but that's just kind of a minor note, a minor footnote in this match. The three-man stuff they did in this match, I thought was very inventive. Like when Corbin had Ziggler in the end of days, but Styles like blocked it by catching Ziggler's legs. That was really cool. The end of days zigzag combo, I thought it was very dramatic looking. It was like, bleh, but it was fun. It was a fun spot. You don't see that often or ever, you know. I thought it was really cool that these three were able to work together the way they did. Ultimately, zigzag to Baron Corbin, the phenomenal forearm to Dolph Ziggler. Styles retains in a heck of a match. So like I said at the beginning of this segment, I mean, I already spoiled it. SmackDown won this week. There's no question about it. There were only 3 matches that happened in this 2-hour show on SmackDown, but they were all very exciting matches to watch. They left you on the edge of your seat. They left you wanting more, and I think they were just very entertaining matches. And the stuff they had with the backstage stuff in between those matches were great because they all served a purpose and they all helped advance storylines. Like what's going on with Carmella and James Ellsworth? How is this thing with Dean Ambrose and The Miz going to evolve? And so yeah, I think it was just overall a very well put together show. Now, Raw last week didn't do well for me because it was way too much talking, not enough wrestling. But I think, you know, this week they fixed that. I thought it was an appropriate balance of wrestling and talky together. But again, I think it was just a lot of matches we've seen before. You know, everything felt the same thing as 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 9 weeks ago. You know, there was purpose to these segments, but it was the same purpose from, you know, Hell in a Cell and further back, Night of Champions. Like we've seen all this stuff before. The main event scene on Raw has gotten totally stagnant, and the mid-card is not much better. Meanwhile, on SmackDown, you do have some of the repetition. Some of it's there. I think it's just the nature of the rosters. You can't help but have a little bit of the same matches here and there, but they're changing things up ever so slightly every week to make things feel a little bit different. And again, I think everything here had a purpose, and it just felt right, and it felt good, and as a fan, all felt right after having to sit through the last couple of weeks of bad Raws. On Raw, the good things were Neville's great, Strowman's great. Those are my 2 high points for Raw, pretty much. And that's pretty much it, though. And that was the final Who Wore It Better of 2016. Obviously, I'm not done with this segment yet, but it's been a very fun ride these last several months. When I first started doing this over the summer, you know, I was worried, like, is this going to get over? Is it going to develop a following? Is it worth my time? But I think in a lot of ways, it's been very much worth my while because it's helping me become a more conscientious viewer of the product and a more conscientious critic of it, because before I was just reviewing the pay-per-views and I didn't have the time or the ability to watch Raw and SmackDown. But now I've been able to do this, and I've been able to better follow the storylines and find out why these things are happening the way they are, for better or for worse. Even though sometimes not all episodes of Raw and SmackDown are great, it's helping me just flesh out and helping expand my knowledge of what the product is like, which I think is, you know, helps me out as a critic. So thank you for helping make Who Wore It Better one of the more popular recurring segments on this channel. I really appreciate it. Let me know what you thought about Raw and SmackDown in the comment section below this week. And of course, don't forget to vote for what show was your favorite in the poll in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, and buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.